The problem exists because white people think they're better than black people, and they want to oppress us, and they want us to allow ourselves to be oppressed.
This is the I agree with you perfectly. This is the basic problem.
Then what do you
that
want to
white
talk to me
people
about?
think they're better
That
than
I can
others.
do. I can't solve the problem. You guys pull the strings that close schools. You guys draw the boundaries that keep our kids restricted to the ghetto. You guys write up the restrictive covenants that keep us out of houses. So it's up to you to talk to your brothers and your sisters and persuade them that they have a responsibility. We've assumed ours for over 400 years, and we're tired of this kind of stuff now. We're not going to suffer patiently anymore. No more turning the other cheek. No more blessing our enemies. No more praying for those who despitefully use us. We're going to show you that we've learned the lessons you've taught us. We've studied your history, and you did not take over this country by singing "We Shall Overcome." You did not gain control of the world like you have it now by dealing fairly with a man and keeping your word. You're treaty breakers, you're liars, you're thieves, you rape entire continents and races of people. Then you wonder why these very people don't have any confidence or trust in you. Your religion means nothing. Your law is a farce, and we see it every day. You demonstrated it in Alabama. And I can say you because you're part of the whole system. You profit from it. In fact, you make your living from it. You couldn't walk around and talk to people, stand up in your pulpit on Sunday and preach nice little songs and say, now we're going to give thanks to the Lord for he is good and old Jesus be among us. As far as we're concerned, your Jesus is contaminated, just like everything else you've tried to force upon us is contaminated.
Well,
so you can have him. And here's what I'll say. I wish you would follow Jesus like we followed him. Because if you did that, then we'd be in charge tomorrow. I think the problem is so bad that we can have no understanding at all.
A lot of black folk are coming at me and saying, why are you reporting on the Russian invasion? This is a white people's war, and people only care because the refugees are white. You need to mind your own black business because this isn't our war. What was that? You'd like me to tackle 2 social issues at once? Yes. Let's. I love shit like this. It's how I keep my Takayuki knife sharp, which is my brain. Mind my own black business, you say? Please, allow me to widen your narrow scope for a moment. Let's talk about wheat! Russia's the largest wheat exporter in the entire world, exporting about $8 billion worth of grain every single year. Ukraine is the 5th largest, exporting about $3 billion worth every year. And it's considered the breadbasket of Europe because 71% of its land is agricultural. And that harvesting land is the size of Italy. Ukraine is also the biggest exporter of seed oils in the world, like safflower and sunflower. Both countries export over 25% of the entire world's wheat. Know where I'm going with this yet? Too early? Let me give you another hint. Russia and Ukraine export their goods from their port cities on the Black Sea. Cities like Kherson, Mykolaiv, and Odessa. Those names sound familiar? They should. The civilians in 2 of those cities and the cities themselves are currently being invaded, seized, and demolished by Russia, and Odessa is next. War in Ukraine means that its ports close because it's under attack, which means that crops are being damaged and there's a diversion of manpower because everybody's fighting. So nobody's harvesting the grain, which means that wheat can't leave the country to feed other countries. Need another hint? 95% of Ukraine's grain exports go to Middle Eastern and North African countries. Still a white war? Tons of countries heavily rely on wheat exports, but Egypt is at the top of the pyramid, no pun intended. Egypt gets almost 85% of its wheat from Ukraine and Russia. Tunisia relies on 50 to 60% of its wheat imports from Ukraine and Russia. Turkey imports around 75% of its wheat from Ukraine and Russia. In 2019, Egypt, Turkey, and Bangladesh bought over half of Russia's entire wheat production. Russia and Ukraine are also major wheat suppliers to Nigeria, Lebanon, Yemen, Sudan. Still a white war? Russia's port cities may not be under military attack, but Russia's money, reputation, and ships are under attack from sanctions. That means that countries don't want to do business with Russia because of what it's doing to Ukraine. Countries are banning Russian ships from entering their ports. Turkey has now blocked passage to Russian fleets through the Black Sea Straits, which they control. And when the flow of grain from the world's largest exporter is disrupted, this has a significant effect on the cost of food. And then food prices rapidly rise, which is occurring right fucking now. If food prices rapidly increase in economically unstable countries, this can lead to people not being able to afford food, and then famines can happen. Everything is connected. Still a white war you shouldn't care about? Now factor in global warming, which is creating endless fires, destroying massive amounts of crops, and creating some of the longest droughts that humanity has ever seen. Then factor in an already disrupted supply chain from a pandemic. Prices for food were already high before this war started. Wheat's at its highest level in 14 years and corn is at a 9-year high. Morocco is a huge wheat and barley producer, but it's in the middle of a 30-year drought, which means that it needs to increase its wheat imports too. Tunisia's down and out, strapped for cash. Yemen and Sudan are economically depressed. Lebanon has 1 month of wheat left in its mills, and then it's shit out of fucking luck. And Lebanon currently has an 80% poverty rate. You think these people can afford food price increases? These countries now have to frantically rush to find alternative countries to buy wheat from that they can already barely afford. And right now, there are too many countries to list that are walking on the edge of a food crisis. And when you're that close to falling off the cliff of starvation, food prices cannot be disturbed, because if they are, that can trigger political conflict within countries. Rising food prices can cause riots. Food has triggered revolutions when people don't have any. Tunisian bread riots. Food instability in Sudan toppled a president. Still a white war? When countries rapidly have to find alternative countries for their food, import prices are higher. Grain may take longer to get there because it has to go via different routes. Transportation costs are higher, which many of these countries can't afford. Another important point. Belarus is the second largest exporter of potassic fertilizer in the entire world. Farmers across the planet need it because it increases crop productivity and yields so they can feed the world. Black farmers need it too, but Belarus is being sanctioned right now because of its role in Russia's war. So in turn, farmers don't get their fertilizers and their crops are drastically reduced, which raises food prices and makes poor people starve. This war equals global food insecurity, and if it spills over into NATO countries, this war equals the existence of life itself being threatened. Still a white war? I know what this is. It's fatigue, cynicism, and trauma from how we as Black people have been treated historically right up to today. I get it, but this war is affecting Black people right now, unless Africans don't count to the Black diaspora. Everything on this planet is connected. If you don't know how things work, learn and ask questions before you run your mouth about something you can't be bothered to understand. Who knew a white war had so many hues?